excited to be joined by Em Adler, who does basically everything at the site. I mean, Em does a daily briefing, which is just must read. And I have the delight of editing at the start of our day. Em covers the Seattle Storm for us. Em covers the WNBA draft. I don't really understand how you do everything you do, Em, but thank you for all of it.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's wonderful to expand my ever-growing list of responsibilities.
Well, let's start with another one of them, which is that you were at NC State this past weekend. NC State plays in a mid-major conference, right? The Atlantic Coast Conference. Is that correct?
Let's see. I believe the ACC led the country in NCAA tournament berths.
Oh, that's nice. So making strides towards the Big East. I'm glad to hear it. But our conference battles aside, what did you see out of NC State this weekend? The offense looked to be damn near unstoppable.
Yeah, they are clicking on all cylinders. One thing that was really nice that they had, which they haven't had for a little while, was Diamond Johnson was just making it rain from the field. She went 5 for 10 in the game at hit all 5 for 3s after basically spending about 2 months hitting nothing. Which I mean that's huge for them. That takes them from a 6-7 player rotation into an 8 player rotation with an elite scoring guard coming off the bench.
Yeah.
And it just puts them in position to do things that they haven't been able to do before. Everything's clicking on all cylinders. Like I said, Elisa Kunane she looks better than she ever has, and she looks just more stable and better on both ends.
Mhm.
Every Their guard play has been incredible. Reina Perez is on a tear, and this is the right time to look like that.
Yeah, Trinaine only had to play about 13 minutes, if memory serves, in the Kansas State game. Do you think that's a huge advantage for her to come in rested, coming into these vital games this weekend in Bridgeport?
I think for sure. I think for sure. It certainly can't hurt them. You have 3 or 4 days off. I think most teams are going to be fairly decently rested, but I don't think it could possibly hurt. And plus, it gave a lot of successful minutes to her backup, Camille Hobby,
Mhm.
and that's just more experience.
You talked about Diamond Johnson, and obviously, we had Diamond Johnson up here. I'm coming to you from Jersey, and Diamond Johnson was here at Rutgers. Looked like the next big star coming out of Rutgers. And when you look at Diamond's freshman year, she really put up numbers that were comparable to any combo guard in the country, really, this side of Paige and Caitlin. So, why do you think it is that NC State has her coming off the bench? And do you think her ceiling remains as high as it looked, at least, from my view, after her freshman year?
So first things first, she's coming off the bench because NC State is starting a 5th or 6th year grad student at point guard in Reina Perez. She's incredibly steady. She's a really good shooter, and her floor game is excellent. And she just has that experience with the team. This is her second year there, and
Mhm.
there's no reason not to have her start at the 2 spot. You got Kai Crutchfield, who is one of the premier 3D players in the entire country.
Mhm.
She hits close to 40% from three, and is also one of the better perimeter defenders that there is. And then Diamond Johnson's just too small to play the three. Not that Jakia Brent Turner at the three isn't good anyway.
Mhm.
So by having her come off the bench, they get that scoring punch in the second place, while also not having to sacrifice any of the lineup chemistry that's been there for a couple of years.
Mhm.
And to your second question, yeah, her ceiling is as high as it was last year for sure. I mean, there just aren't guards who have that crossover, who have that step back,
Yeah.
and who have that passing vision while being able to shoot as well as she can.
Yeah, I mean, Diamond Johnson, just sky's the limit. I totally agree with you. Now, NC State faces a really interesting matchup. Again, it's a battle of mid majors. You got NC State versus Notre Dame, two ACC teams. Really good to see plucky little programs like that coming through here and getting the opportunity to play. Both of them have been absurd, off the charts offensively. Notre Dame scored 108 points in their second round win. What are we looking at in terms of what this game is? Is it a 98-96 final, or do you think that NC State, which clearly has been one of the best teams in the country all year, joking aside about the mid major status, has the clear upper hand in your view?
So just to start off is where the game is projected. Her hoop stats has the pregame spread at about 12 points,
Mhm.
whereas Vegas opened around 7 points in favor of NC State, and that line has actually moved a point towards NC State since it's opened,
Mhm.
which is basically to say that to varying degrees of confidence, people who are smart and do good math appear to think NC State is a multi-possession favorite, and I don't think there's much reason to doubt that.
Yeah.
These teams played before in the teams played before in the regular season, obviously both being part of the ACC. Notre Dame actually won. It was a 3-point win back in February.
Hmm.
But these teams have changed a little bit since. Notre Dame has been a little up and down all season, mostly up, sometimes little skids here and there. Whereas NC State has mostly just been right on top of everything with an occasional slip here and there. So it really comes down to what Notre Dame is able to get out of its starters. Notre Dame does not play with much of a bench in the first place, but NC State has gone from a team that was in that construction to a team that goes to its bench and a team that can play in a lot of versatile ways, bringing a more traditional four off the bench to replace Kayla Jones, who starts at the four. She's more of a big wing. They like to play Diamond Johnson and Raina Perez together a lot. So you're looking at a very adaptable team in them versus Notre Dame, who when they click excellently and they have incredible chemistry, and they'll open the game against Oklahoma 43-15 after like 12 minutes.
Yeah.
You don't know necessarily which Notre Dame you're going to get until you're about 5 minutes into the game. But with NC State, it's just about keeping it steady and being able to make sure that they are recycling possessions and that they are able to work through whatever Notre Dame comes to them, because Neil Ivey is a great coach and she's going to have the team ready.
Hmm.
I don't know if I would necessarily want to, take those lines I talked about at the beginning and really hammer Notre Dame, but I think it can be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think both of these games are fascinating to me. The other in the Bridgeport region that's going to be played on Saturday, and just to set the scene for you, it's 11:30 a.m. is the first game, the NC State versus Notre Dame Eastern time on Saturday, and then at 2 you've got Uconn versus Indiana, and of course the winner of those two games will match up on Monday night in Bridgeport with a trip to the Final Four on the line. I'm curious how you see the Indiana versus Uconn matchup. I know you and I have dramatically different views as far as where Uconn is at this point in the season, but just relative to Indiana, who survived a very tough matchup against Princeton in the round of 32.
So I don't think that there's a lot of teams that are well constructed to give UConn a big run for its money.
Hmm.
But clearly they drew one in the round of 32 with UCF, and people have mixed opinions on whether that game was good. I was thoroughly entertained. Now I understand why people enjoy wrestling. As far as Indiana,
Wait, can I just
I
jump
think
in on that? Because that was such basketball defensive purity, right? And so I grew up on Big East men's basketball. I grew up on like the period of time where I'm an old, right? So I was around for when the Big East even tried to go to like 6 fouls, which I just love. It's just like the Big East basically saying like we want there to be more physical contact. We want to encourage and allow that to happen. I'm kind of sad they went away from it, but point being that is fun. That is fun for me. That is my wheelhouse. That is like Charles Oakley era New York Knicks, right? That is what UCF plays, and UCF plays that everywhere they go. And there are all these people who are like, oh well, UConn showed that they were going to struggle because they struggled against UCF's defense. Everyone struggles against UCF's defense. You could put a front court of Sylvia Fowles, Brianna Stewart, and Elena Deladon on the floor, and a backcourt of Sue and Diana, and that team would score 65 against a KH defense. That's just my personal opinion, but that's my thinking about the round of 32 game we watched. Yes, it was endlessly entertaining.
Yeah, no, I genuinely thought it was really entertaining, despite, there were some drawbacks to it. There were also some, I think teams are all going to struggle with UCF's defense. I think different teams are going to struggle in different ways. I think what it did expose to a certain extent wasn't that, UConn is necessarily going to struggle against top defense, but against one that is that good, which I would say UCF is the best defense this side of South Carolina. As I see it, it showed that they don't necessarily have the talent to just go through the defense with an offense in the way that they could in years past. You're playing players in the rotation like Olivia Nelson Adada, Evina Westbrook, Nick Moole, Leah Edwards, who aren't the kind of scorers or Swiss Army knives on offense that UConn has had in years past, where you can just say, this is going to work as is. And I think that sort of leads a little bit into why I think Indiana is not. I don't think they're going to win, but I think they're a relatively tougher matchup. They basically play a 6-player rotation. Then they're all experienced, so they're not going to falter just because they're facing a tougher scheme. They know how to work together through adversity.
Hmm.
I think having Nicole Cardano-Hillary, that's Indiana's. I guess basically they're two guards. They have their backcourt can really you can consider them any position between 1 and
It's
3.
basically a
All 3 of them.
3 guard set, and everyone does 1 through 3 at different times.
Pretty much, yeah. And so Nicole Cardano-Hillary is basically the on-ball pass defender. Um, and I think she and Grace Berger, who is basically their point guard, have a great complementary pairing. You can throw at Paige Beckers, and then have the other one just sort of scrape over to whoever's the next closest guard, whether we're talking Azzy Fudd or Kristen Williams. Both of them are well equipped to take both of them on.
Hmm.
I don't think UConn is necessarily the best equipped to take advantage of Indiana's weaknesses. Alexa Goulbe, they're big at the 4, her limits. Mackenzie Holmes, their center's defense it's not great. It's fine.
Hmm.
I think Indiana's pretty good at their hedging scheme, and that's probably the best way to stop UConn from getting their scores downhill. And for the most part, I would expect Azzy Fudd to have fewer just wide open backside catch and shoot opportunities than she's had in recent games.
Yeah.
So I think that'll slow the game down in the way that Indiana wants it to, and at least give some opportunities.
AZ needs to have a big game. She had 4 threes against Central Florida, and she's going to have to do something
4
similar
for
there.
4.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was obviously the difference in that game, which turned out to be a 5-point margin. And so, between her, I do wonder what you get out of Olivia Nelson-Ododa. I know UConn fans do as well. Liv is somebody who's worked hard at improving her game. And I don't know that we've necessarily yet seen the type of shooting range that allows things to open up in the middle, which has been something Liv has been working on steadily since her freshman year, quite frankly. But the other part of it, and she didn't even mention Allie Patberg, the fact that she's in her 31st year at Indiana, which is the kind of continuity you very rarely see in a college or, quite frankly, even in a corporation where you're given a gold watch. And so for Allie Patberg to be there as long as she is and to help steady things is one thing. But Grace Berger, I don't know. I run out of superlatives when it comes to Grace Berger and what she's able to do from a shooting, from a passing perspective, from an understanding of like what is necessary for Indiana to win. Grace Berger it's not a surprise that Grace Berger hit what turned out to be essentially the game-winning shot against Princeton. Grace Berger knows what she's doing. If Grace Berger went into the WNBA draft this year, and she has already said she's not, she's waiting another year, she would go.
Unfortunately.
Fortunately for Indiana, unfortunately for the WNBA, yes, but she would go, I believe, in the top half of the first round because there is an understanding and appreciation. I saw that look, but I'm telling you, there's an understanding and appreciation.
I'll agree on the first rounder.
First round, but should go. I'll put it this way: the WNBA rightly understands that Grace Berger is going to be an elite player at the next level. And I would argue that Grace Berger will be one of the 6 most impactful players who is currently playing if she had come out this year. I think she's that level of player at the WNBA level. I'm very excited to see Grace Berger at the next level. I just think it's going to be an absolute classic. I think this is going to be the best game in the Bridgeport Regional because I honestly believe if UConn gets past the round of 16 against Indiana, UConn's going to beat either Notre Dame or NC State. And I think it's going to be by a 10-point or more margin. That's what I'm prepared to say here today. What do you think of that?
I think that's a relatively insane take. Indiana and NC State are entirely different tiers of teams. We're talking about NC State, which is a unanimous top 3 or top 4 team in the country, versus
Agreed.
Indiana, which hosted games, deservedly so, and has not touched the top 5 or 6 since the preseason polls. Which, look, I like Indiana. And Grace Berger, like you mentioned, she's fantastic. She's got one of the best floor games in the entire country. She's a really solid defender, excellent help side defender. She's basically going to shoot 9 for 17 every single game and not turn the ball over much.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is between Patberg, who I will mention just for listeners who don't know, Allie Patberg has literally set the record for the most amount of time spent in college in women's basketball history. Between her and Cardano Hillary, and to a lesser extent Alexa Gulbe, they're going to shoot the same way every game.
Yeah.
Sometimes each of them scores 20 points. Sometimes each of them scores 4 points. You don't really know what you're going to get, as opposed to UConn's offense, who, I think you're not going to get 4 or 5 players scoring 20 points, but they are definitely more consistent. So I think that's something to look out for in the game. And if they advance, their game against NC State is going to be great. I would love that matchup. Although I would definitely not be betting UConn to take a 10-point spread.
I think UConn will win that game. I think they will win it relatively comfortably with the Final Four on the line, playing in front of their home-ish crowd. It will be essentially a home crowd in Bridgeport, Connecticut. But
State fans travel.
They do. Listen, people are going to be all over me about this on the NC State side, and rightly so. But that is where I see it, and it'll be interesting. And certainly, I have a lot of respect for Wes Moore and what he's doing. I just think that is a uniquely difficult matchup for NC State and UConn.
Coach of the Year finalist, Wes Moore.
How old were you in 2007?
Probably 7.
Okay. All right. I have 2 children now, one of whom is about to turn 12. I had 0 children back in 2007. I had been married a year, a newlywed. We're now an old married couple going on 16 years. That was the last time UConn didn't make the Final Four. The next time that I want to say that I think UConn's not making the Final Four will be after they fail to make the Final Four. Someone's going to have to prove to me that they can keep UConn out of the Final Four before I see it happening. That's my UConn take. That's my relatively insane, as you put it, UConn take. Take me through it last thing before we go. Just do you think that the ACC, having made these strides, has an opportunity to move into the Big East class come next year?
That's a good question. Here's what I'll say. UConn left the American for the Big East this year.
Yes.
And I don't have UConn's schedule up, but I think it's safe to say that they played over 20 games against the Big East this year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
This year, the American Conference has played UConn twice. Across the entire season, the American and the Big East have played the same number of games within 3 possessions of UConn as the Big East.
Mm-hmm. The American, so you're talking specifically
2 games. The American is 2 for 2 in keeping games within 3 possessions against UConn. The Big East is 2 for 20 something.
Which teams are those in the American? Was that Tulsa who held them to within 3 possessions? Was that East Carolina, or was it the 2 really good teams in the American?
It was USF back in November.
Very good team. Jose Fernandez, NCAA tournament team, and then UCF. Mm-hmm. Yes. Criminally underseeded. I should not have been a 7. Ridiculous that it was a 7.
Absolutely.
Big East had 4 tournament teams. That speaks to UConn's greatness.
One of them got absolutely clobbered by Dayton.
They did. That was a rough night for DePaul. Villanova played very tough into the second round. Beat BYU onto the second round. Yeah. Played Michigan.
Really hot in the season.
In Ann Arbor. No, got healthy. Maddie Sievers was back in at full strength. Maggie
Sievers has been healthy since December.
November and December relative to March for these teams, they're a lifetime. They're a lifetime of difference. They are. Villanova's on the rise. That's a program I love.
We could do the same thing for Moon Urson's Tulane.
That is very true. That is a very good point. All right, M. Adler, how do people follow you? Because they should. Because you are a ride on Twitter, by the way.
So obviously, support the Next. Follow our stuff. You can read all my daily briefings, which are essentially 600 to 800 words that I write at 2 a.m. every day. And you can see exactly how delirious I am at those hours. More importantly, you can see how delirious I am at all hours of the day on Twitter at EM_ADLER. That's M_Adler. I might be tweeting about the Denver Nuggets, but probably I'm just tweeting about whatever random game I am rewatching that day, along with various highlights of Emily Anxious passing or Zaya Cook hitting stupid shots.
And thank you for shining the light on lesser conferences like the ACC. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.